I remember the exact moment I held her for the first time. It was a cold winter morning, and the hospital smelled of antiseptic and hope. My daughter Laura had gone through a long labor, and by the time they finally brought that tiny pink bundle into the room, my hands were trembling not from age, but from emotion. I had been a mother before, yes, but becoming a grandmother, that was different. It felt like watching your own legacy take its first breath. I looked down into her little face, all scrunched and red, and I whispered, "Welcome to the world, my sweet girl." And even though she couldn't understand me, I promised her something then and there. I promised that I would always be there, that I would love her fiercely, endlessly, no matter what. I named her in my heart that day, my sunshine, because that's what she was to me. In those first few weeks, Laura was tired, overwhelmed, and adjusting to motherhood. I stepped in like any proud grandma would. I held the baby through long nights. I sang lullabies from my own childhood. I changed diapers and warmed bottles. I watched her tiny fingers curl around mine like I was her whole world, and maybe I was. For a little while, we formed a bond in those early days that I thought nothing could ever break. She would smile when she saw me. Her first word wasn't mama or dada, it was nana. That's what she called me, my nana. And every time she said it, something in me melted. I was more than a grandmother, I was her safe place, her storyteller, her warm hug at the end of a long day. As she grew older, I stayed close. I picked her up from school when her parents were working late. We'd bake cookies and pretend we were on a cooking show. I still have the videos she made on my old camcorder, her, in an apron that dragged across the kitchen floor, narrating every step in her tiny voice. On weekends, she'd spend the night at my place. She always said it felt more cozy than her own room. We had our little routines: hot cocoa before bed, a bedtime story, and our signature saying before sleep, always together, even when we're apart. She made drawings for me, little notes: Nana, I love you. Nana, you are my best friend. I kept every single one, still have them tucked away in a drawer, worn and yellowed now, but still precious, because they were pieces of a time when I felt needed, wanted, cherished. I was there for every birthday, every scraped knee, every dance recital and school play. I sat in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else. I cheered until my voice gave out. She'd run up to me afterward, still in costume, and wrap her arms around me like I was the reason she performed at all. That's the kind of love I remember. The kind of love that made me believe I would be in her life forever, that I would help her plan her wedding someday, that I would sit proudly in the front pew, tears in my eyes as she walked down the aisle, radiant and groaned, but still my little sunshine. I never imagined a world where I wouldn't even be invited. People often say that love like ours can't just disappear, that memories and bonds don't break overnight. But the truth is, sometimes they fade, slowly, painfully, and sometimes they're ripped away in silence, with no explanation at all. Looking back, I can't point to one moment where things went wrong. There was no shouting match, no betrayal, no dramatic falling out, just time. Time passed. She got older. Her friends became more important. Then college came. Then a job, a boyfriend, a new life. I understood that. I really did. That's how it's supposed to be. But I never thought I'd be erased, because that's what it felt like. Like I'd been lovingly written into the first few chapters of her life, and then deleted from the rest. It didn't happen all at once. First, she stopped coming by as often. Then, phone calls turned into short texts. The stories stopped. The updates faded. And one day, I realized I hadn't seen her in over a year. Still, I waited. I told myself she was busy. I convinced myself that the bond we had was strong enough to withstand time, distance, anything. I believed that when the big moments came, when it really mattered, she would remember me. She would reach out. She would want me there. But she did, in single quotes. And when I found out about the wedding, when I saw the photos and the smiling faces, when I realized the day had come and gone, and my name had never even been on the list, it broke something in me. Because this wasn't just about a wedding. It was about a lifetime of love, of showing up, of being there. And in that one painful silence, it all felt like it had been forgotten. Asterisk. Some people say the relationship between a grandmother and her granddaughter is magical, and I believe that. It's a different kind of love, not wrapped in the pressure of parenting, but steeped in patience, comfort, and time. I was there not to discipline, but to adore. And she welcomed every drop of my affection, like a flower soaking up the sun. As she grew, our bond only deepened. When she was 3, she loved brushing my hair. She'd climb onto my lap, a pink plastic brush in her hand, and say, "Nana, I'm making you pretty." Never mind that she'd leave knots or pull a little too hardy to let her, every time, because it made her smile, and that smile meant the world to me. At 5, she started calling me every night just to say goodnight. I still remember how her tiny voice sounded through the phone. "I love you, Nana. Don't forget." And I never did. By the time she started school, I was her go-to person for everything. Lost tooth. Call Nana. Bad grade. Nana will cheer you up. Trouble with friends. Let's talk it through over cookies. She'd sit at my kitchen table, swinging her little legs under the chair, confiding in me like I was her secret keeper, her personal guide through life. And I took that role seriously. I kept journals of her milestones. Every drawing she gave me was tucked into a folder. Every little poem, every photo from our adventure zoos, puppet shows, backyard picnics, I saved them all. I even made a memory box, a physical record of our time together. Always imagined giving it to her on her wedding day. She loved staying at my house. Said it smelled like home. I cooked her favorite meals: mac and cheese with too much cheese, pancakes with chocolate chips, and little cups of tea that were really just warm milk with honey. We'd play board games, dance around to music, or just curl up on the couch and watch old cartoons together. There was a time when she told everyone I was her best friend. I think that's the part that cuts the deepest now, because it didn't feel like just a grandmother-granddaughter relationship. It felt like we had something rare, something permanent, something sacred. And when she hit her teenage years, even as she started pulling away from the rest of the world, as most teenagers do, she still came to me. I was the one who helped her pick out her first dress for a school dance. I was the one she called crying when her first boyfriend broke her heart. I stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours that night, just listening. No judgment, just presence. There was a moment, maybe when she was 15 or 16, when she gave me a necklace, a little silver heart, with the word always engraved on it. She hugged me and said, "No matter what happens, you'll always be my Nana, always." I wore that necklace nearly every day. Even now, it still hangs by my bed, a reminder of a time when I believed love like that could never be undone. After high school, she got busy, of course, college, work, a new city. But even then, she'd send me silly pictures. She called me when she got her first job. She FaceTimed me when she got her new apartment. I'd send her care packages, cookies, notes of encouragement, little knitted scarves she probably never wore, but always thanked me for. And then, something shifted. It was slow, gradual, the kind of change you only notice once it's already happened. The calls came less often, the texts were shorter. She started saying, "I'll call you back later," and later didn't always come. I told myself it was normal. She was growing up, finding her place in the world. I didn't want to be the kind of grandmother who guilt-tripped her. I wanted her to feel free, supported, unconditionally loved. But in the quiet moments, I missed her. I missed the little girl with cookie crumbs on her chin. I missed the teenager who asked me for advice at midnight. I missed being her person. Still, I kept believing that our bond was unbreakable. Because love like that doesn't just vanish, right? So when I imagined her wedding someday, I didn't wonder if I'd be there. I imagined what dress I'd wear. I pictured us crying together during her vows. I even practiced what I might say if I was asked to speak. Thought I'd be in the room where it happened, but I wasn single quotes, T. And now I look at that silver necklace, the one that says always, and I wonder what always really means. You never expect a relationship to end quietly. You imagine betrayal coming with shouting, slammed doors, angry words, but sometimes the greatest heartbreak is silent. And that's how it was with her. The space between us didn't come all at once. It crept in soft, subtle, like a draft under a closed door. At first, I didn't even notice it. I brushed it off as life getting busy. I told myself, she's young, she's working, she's growing, and I believed that. Because I had to. It started after she got her first real job. She was proud of herself. I was proud of her too. We talked about it on the phone for an hour, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. But when I said, "Let's celebrate this weekend, you picked the restaurant," she hesitated. "I'll see if I can," she said. but I might have plans with Daniel. Daniel, that was the new boyfriend. I didn't know much about him yet, just his name and that he worked in marketing. She spoke about him often, how kind he was, how ambitious. I was happy for her, of course. She deserved love, but a small part of me worried about what love might take away from us. The weekend came and went. She didn't call. I waited, didn't want to nag, didn't want to sound clingy, so I sent a message Monday morning. Hope your weekend was lovely, sweetheart. Let's catch up soon. Love, Nana. She replied with a heart emoji, not words, just that tiny red symbol that somehow felt more like a period than a sentence. I began noticing that pattern, more and more short replies, missed calls, forgotten birthdays. At first, she'd apologize, saying she was overwhelmed with work or that her phone had died, and I believed her, because love believes. But the excuses grew thinner, and my hope wore down like stone underwater. Once I called her 3 days in a row, no answer. When she finally called back, she laughed, not cruelly but carelessly. Sorry, Nana, life's just been hectic. You know how it is. No, I didn't know. Because I would never go that long without her voice if I could help it. Holidays became awkward too. She used to come early to Thanksgiving dinner, help me in the kitchen, sneak little bites of stuffing while I wasn't looking. We'd put on Christmas music, laugh, dance around. But then, one year, she only stayed an hour. Said they had a dinner to get to at Daniel's mother's house. I remember standing at the window, watching her car pull out of the driveway, a lump forming in my throat. The turkey sat half-carved, and the house felt colder, somehow, emptier. Still, I didn't say anything, didn't ask questions, didn't demand anything. I kept telling myself, she'd come back, she just needs space. I have to be patient, because sometimes love means waiting, and sometimes waiting turns into silence. The photos stopped coming, the little videos she used to send, the ones where she'd show me her new haircut or a funny thing her cat did, vanished. I watched her life unfold through filtered images on social media, the way strangers do. I'd click like and leave heart emojis, hoping it reminded her I was still here, but the comments were never returned. I found myself wondering, had I done something wrong? Had I said something to push her away? There was no fight I could remember, no harsh words exchanged, only a growing space where closeness used to be. I asked my daughter Laura once, "Is everything okay between me and her?" She shrugged. "She's just grown up, Mom, they get busy, that's all." But it wasn't just busy. It was different. She stopped calling me Nana. That was when it hit me the hardest. She began addressing me by my first name, Margaret. At first, I thought maybe it was a joke, or a habit picked up from Daniel. But it stung, like hearing a stranger say it. I'd been Nana since the day she was born. It wasn't a nickname. It was a bond. Losing that word felt like losing a part of myself. I started journaling more, just to have somewhere to put the ache. I'd write entries as if I were writing letters to her, hoping that one day she might read them, or maybe I just needed to feel like I was still talking to her, even if she wasn't listening. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness. It was the confusion, because I couldn't find the moment it all turned. Was it something I failed to see? Was I too much to present? Did I overstep some invisible boundary, or did she simply outgrow me? That thought haunts me, still, this idea that love has an expiration date, that the person you once meant the world to can simply can forget you. But I held on to hope, because love, especially a grandmother's love, doesn't fade. Not really. Even when the phone stays silent. Even when the pictures don't include you. Even when the distance becomes a canyon. Love waits. Love remembers. Love aches. But still hopes. And so I kept hoping, believing that, when something as big as a wedding came, she would remember me. She would remember who held her first. Asterisk, they say, love changes people. That when someone new comes into your life, priorities shift, routines bend, and the heart makes room for someone else. I understood that. I welcomed it, even, but I never imagined that someone else would completely replace me. His name was Daniel. First time I heard about him, she called me, bubbling with excitement. Her voice had that youthful joy, the kind that reminded me of her little girl days, when she'd come running in to tell me she'd won a spelling bee or learned how to ride a bike. "Nana, I met someone," she said, barely able to hold back a giggle. "He's amazing." I remember smiling, even though I felt a tiny flutter of unease. Not jealousy, not exactly, more like a motherly instinct. I wanted to know who this man was who'd captured her heart. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe he would take care of the person I had cherished since the moment she was placed in my arms. I asked her questions. Of course, where did they meet? What does he do? What's he like? She gave me all the sweet surface-level answers. They met at work. He was kind, ambitious, a bit shy at first, but so thoughtful once you got to know him. I told her I was happy for her. And I meant it. Because I truly was. Love, when it's real and good, is one of life's most beautiful gifts, and I wanted her to have that. I wanted her to be cherished the way every young woman deserves to be. Still, a voice inside whispered, "Don't let go too quickly." But I ignored it. Then came the day I met him. It was a Sunday brunch. Laura hosted it at her house. I arrived with my homemade scones, her favorite hand wore my best earrings. I was nervous, as if I were being evaluated. And maybe I was. Daniel shook my hand with a polite smile, but something about it felt forced. His grip was firm. His eyes didn't linger on mine for long. He was courteous, respectful in that rehearsed kind of way. He said all the right things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a guest being tolerated, not a family member being welcomed. I tried to connect with him. I asked about his work, his hobbies, his family. He answered, but he never asked about me. Not once. Later that day, I noticed something else. My granddaughter barely spoke to me. She sat close to him, laughed at his jokes, looked to him for reactions before answering even simple questions. It wasn't the same sparkle in her eyes I used to know. It was softer, dulled, maybe, like a girl trying to be someone else, to fit beside him. Still, I told myself I was imagining it. I'd seen enough young love to know that people act a little different when they're trying to impress someone new. I gave them space. I stayed quiet. But over the months, the changes became impossible to ignore. Phone calls dropped off. When I reached out, she'd replied days later, sometimes with a vague, "Sorry, just been busy with Daniel." She stopped coming to visit altogether. I'd hear about their vacations from Laura, or see the pictures online. Matching sweaters, beach photos, elegant dinners. No invitation for Nana. One Thanksgiving. She didn't show up at all. No warning, no call. Just a message the next day. "Sorry, we couldn't make it. We were with Daniel's parents this year." And that's when the pieces started falling into place. I began to realize that Daniel didn't just capture her heart, he isolated it. Maybe not intentionally, maybe not with cruelty, but his presence marked the beginning of the divide. She stopped turning to me for advice. She stopped including me in her world. And I don't think it was just growing up. I think he made her feel like she didn't need me anymore. There was one moment I'll never forget. Her birthday. I sent her a gift like I always did, a handmade quilt I'd spent weeks on, with pieces of fabric from dresses she wore as a child. It was sentimental, probably old-fashioned, but it was full of love. She never acknowledged it. No thank you. No message. Nothing. Weeks later, when I asked about it, she said, "Oh, it was nice, but Daniel said it was kind of outdated." Not really our style. Outdated. I don't think she realized what that word did to me. It wasn't just about the quilt. It was about everything we'd shared, everything we'd built together, our memories, our bond, our love. To hear it dismissed so casually made me feel like an old book gathering dust on a forgotten shelf. I tried to reach her heart again. I invited her to tea, asked her to come over and help me bake cookies like we used to. She always had a reason to decline, always somewhere else to be. And slowly, painfully, I accepted it. He had become her family, and I was no longer part of that picture. Even then, even after all that, I still believed that when the day came, her wedding day, she'd reach for me, that no matter how far we had drifted, she would remember who held her first. But she didn't, and I was left with an RSVP that never came. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because I was folding laundry, humming a hymn I hadn't thought about in years, when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was my neighbor, Patricia Kalina, someone who usually phones in the middle of the day unless something important was happening. "Margaret," she said with a voice both excited and cautious. "Did you see it yet?" "See what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "Your granddaughter, she's engaged. It's all over Facebook. The photos are beautiful. You must be over the moon." I froze. Engaged. I hadn't heard a word about it. Not a call, not a text, not even a message with an emoji. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the phone to check. I opened the app and there it was. Right at the top of my feed, her smiling face, wrapped in Daniel's arms, a ring glistening on her finger, a caption that read, "He asked," and I said yes. Hundreds of comments, dozens of heart reactions, friends congratulating, coworkers tagging her in celebratory GIFs, but no mention of me. I sat down at the table, holding the phone like it was something foreign and heavy. My eyes welled with tears, but not from joy, from the deep, sharp sting of being forgotten. I felt like someone had ripped open a gift and thrown away the person who wrapped it. How could something so monumental happen in her life, and I had to hear about it from a neighbor? I told myself maybe it was a mistake, maybe she was planning to call that evening, maybe she'd been caught up in the moment. I waited the rest of the day with my phone by my side. I didn't even start dinner, afraid I might miss her call, but nothing came. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reason through it. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she wanted to surprise everyone all at once. Maybe, but in my heart, I knew. The distance that had been growing between us hadn't just happened, it had been chosen. I considered calling her the next day, but something inside me said, no, not out of pride, out of hurt. I wanted her to realize what she had done. I wanted her to notice the silence and wonder why her Nana hadn't called to scream with happiness, to offer blessings, to ask about the ring, the proposal, the date. But days passed, and the silence continued. She posted more photos, engagement dinners, bridal magazines, little glimpses into her planning. The words family and future kept appearing in her captions, and yet I was never part of the picture. I started to feel like a ghost, someone who had once mattered, now fading from the edges of her story. What hurt the most was not the lack of invitation, but the lack of acknowledgement. I had spent years pouring my soul into our bond, and now, nothing. It was as if those moments we shared, those birthday parties, those late-night calls, the cookies, the hugs had all been swept under a rug, like dust no one cared to remember. One day, I saw a picture of her dress fitting. Her mother was there, along with Daniel's sister, a few bridesmaids, smiles all around. No empty space where I should have been. Just joy I was not a part of. I sat in my living room, the same room where she had once danced in her pajamas to a Disney song, and felt something inside me fracture. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about being erased from a life I had helped build. I tried talking to Laura, my daughter. I asked her why I hadn't heard anything about the engagement from my own granddaughter. She didn't meet my eyes. She didn't mean anything by it, she said. She just figured you wouldn't be that involved. Weddings are stressful. You know how it is. No, I didn't. Because if the roles were reversed, I couldn't imagine planning a single part of such a meaningful day without including the woman who had once rocked me to sleep and whispered stories in my ear. It wasn't about stress, it was about choice, and for reasons I still don't fully understand. She had chosen to keep me out. That realization hurt in a way no one prepared me for. I had lost people before, friends, siblings, even my husband, but nothing compared to the slow, invisible loss of someone still living, someone who used to love you. I didn't cry that night. I just sat quietly and stared at that engagement post again, the way her smile curved, the way Daniel looked at her. I tried to imagine the moment he proposed. Was it romantic? Was there music playing? Did she cry? Was she thinking of the woman who used to braid her hair while singing lullabies? I wanted to believe she had, but deep down, I knew she hadn't. And maybe that was the moment when I began to let go, not of the love I had for her, because that would never leave, but of the hope that things would return to the way they once were. Because sometimes, even when you give someone your heart, they don't carry it with them into every chapter. Sometimes, they leave it behind without ever turning the page to say goodbye. Asterisk, there's a strange kind of pain that comes from realizing you weren't just forgotten, you were intentionally left out. I had been clinging to hope, foolishly maybe, but still holding on. Hope that the mail had simply been delayed, that a phone call would come, that perhaps a surprise invitation had been planned just for me, like she used to do with her birthday parties, when she'd call me 2 days early and whisper, "Nana, you're getting something special." But the day I realized the invitation wasn't coming, was a Wednesday. A very normal, very quiet Wednesday. I had just finished watering my plants. I remember wiping the sweat from my brow, my knees aching slightly from kneeling to tend to the hydrangeas she once helped me plant, the same ones she took pictures next to in her prom dress. the ones she said would always remind her of me. I sat down with my cup of tea, checked the mailbox as I always did, and found it empty again. Then I did something I hadn't wanted to do. I went online and checked her wedding website. That it was there, bold, bright, filled with smiling photos and pastel colors, engagement pictures in a sun-drenched field, bios of the wedding party, information about the venue, the time, the date. Everything was perfect, except there was no mention of me. No Grandma Margaret will be reading a poem. No reception, dance with Nana. No subtle nod that I even existed. As I scrolled further, I came across the RSVP section. I was curious. Maybe I missed a digital invite. Maybe this was how she was doing it. I typed in my name. No match found. I tried again, slower. Margaret Miller. No match found. And just like that, it was real. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. The air felt heavy in my lungs. My fingers trembled slightly, hovering over the keyboard. I sat there, staring at those 3 words on the screen like they were etched in stone. No match found. I pushed the laptop closed gently, careful not to let my frustration break the calm. I didn't cry, not at first. I just sat still, letting the weight of it settle. In that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our memories, one after another, like old film reels in my mind. Her first steps in my living room, her laugh echoing as I pushed her on the swing, the way she used to fall asleep in my lap while we watched old movies. How does a love that deep get forgotten? How do you become a stranger in a life you once helped shape? I wasn't angry. That would have been easier, maybe. Anger gives you something to hold on to, something to throw back. But what I felt was worse. I felt invisible. The kind of invisible, where no one notices when you're not there, where your absence isn't even a question. A few days later, I saw a post from one of her bridesmaids, a caption that read, "Only 2 weeks until we celebrate love with the most beautiful bride," and I realized, with a sharp pain in my chest, that the final countdown had already begun and I was nowhere in the picture. I could have reached out, I could have called and asked, "Why didn't you invite me?" I could have begged for an explanation. Tried to force my way into a moment I had once believed would include me without question. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. If I had to ask to be included, I was already excluded. You see, it's not about the invitation. It's about what that missing envelope represents. It represents every bedtime story, every dance recital, every whispered secret she ever shared with me, and how all of that somehow no longer mattered. It represents the invisible lines families draw when they choose which relationships to nurture and which to let wither away, and I was on the wrong side of that line. That realization shattered me in ways I didn't know were possible. I didn't tell Laura. I didn't tell anyone, because saying it out loud made it feel even more final, like once the words left my mouth, they couldn't be taken back. So I carried it quietly, the way women of my generation were taught to carry pain, with dignity, with silence, with a smile that fools most. But inside, I felt something crack, open. Not bitterness, not yet, but sorrow, the kind that nestles deep in your bones and lingers in every room you walk through, the kind that turns joy into something you watch from the outside, like pressing your hand against a window while others danced just beyond your reach. The day I realized I wasn't invited wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches, no angry texts. Just the quiet finality of being left out of the most important day in her life, not because I had done something wrong, but because I had become someone she no longer saw. Asterisk. After days of silence, after tossing and turning through sleepless nights and whispering questions into the darkness, I finally did what I had been avoiding. I called Laura Dotna as a mother demanding answers, not as a grandmother pleading for inclusion, but as a woman utterly heartbroken, trying to understand why her world had shifted without explanation. She picked up after the second ring. "Hey Mom," she said, distracted, like she was in the middle of something. "I won't keep you long," I replied, already feeling my chest tighten. "I just wanted to ask you something. About the wedding." There was a pause, short but loaded. "You mean Emily's?" she asked, as if there were any other wedding I could be talking about. "Yes," I said softly. I saw everything. Online, the website, the posts, and I realized I'm not invited." Another pause, and then a sigh. "Well, Mom, it's complicated." I felt the breath catch in my throat. "Complicated, Laura? I helped raise that girl. I fed her, rocked her to sleep, helped her with her homework. We were inseparable. How is this complicated? She didn't answer right away. I heard movement. Maybe she was pacing. Maybe she was trying to come up with a gentle way to say something that would feel like a punch in the stomach. Then she spoke. She didn't feel like it was a good idea. She said, "Things have been distant, that you two aren't close anymore." I blinked. We're not close anymore because she stopped calling, because I wasn't included. How could I stay close if I'm being shut out? Laura's voice changed, then subtly, but it did. It grew sharper, firmer. "Mom, Emily's an adult now. She's building her own life. She has different priorities. And honestly, she feels like you've been judging her relationship with Daniel. That you were never warm to him." That stung more than I could have imagined. "I tried," I said, my voice cracking. "I tried so hard." He barely looked at me when we met. He never asked me a thing about my life. But I smiled. I was polite. I sent gifts. I congratulated her on the engagement even when I had to find out through someone else. What else was I supposed to do? She felt uncomfortable. Laura replied, "Like you didn't approve." But I was never even given the chance to be close to him. I said, "She pulled away from me, Laura. You both did. And now you're telling me this is somehow my fault." Laura let out another long breath, this one filled with frustration. "I'm not blaming you, Mom. I'm just saying, Emily didn't feel like including you would make the day better. She said it would be awkward." I was stunned. Awkward. Me, the woman who held her when she had nightmares, who cheered her on stage at school plays, who wrote her handwritten notes for her lunchbox. I couldn't keep the emotion from my voice. She said she didn't want any drama," Laura added, as if that justified everything. I felt a wave of nausea. "Laura, do you hear yourself? Do you realize what you're saying? That I'm being excluded from my own granddaughter's wedding because she assumes I might ruin it by being present." There was silence again. I could almost hear her swallow. "I'm sorry, Mom, but it's Emily's decision." Those words broke me. It wasn't just the exclusion, it was the fact that my own daughter, the child I carried and raised, wasn't standing beside me. She wasn't defending me. She wasn't fighting for me to be seen, to be respected, to be included. She didn't even call me. I whispered. "She was afraid it would hurt you more to hear it directly," Laura answered, and there it was, excuse they always use when they know they've done something cruel. "We didn't want to hurt you," as if ignoring me, erasing me, leaving me out of the most important day of our family's life, wasn't already hurting me. I would have rather had the truth than this silence. I said, choking back tears. "I'm sorry," she repeated, but it felt hollow, now, like an automatic phrase said out of habit, not from the heart. "I hope one day you realize what this feels like," I said, not out of spite, but from a place of deep, aching honesty. To love someone so completely, and watch them forget you exist. We ended the call quietly. No yelling, no resolution, just the soft click of a goodbye that didn't feel like one. Afterward, I sat in my chair, staring out the window, and let the tears come freely, because now, the truth was clear. It wasn't just Emily who had left me out, it was Laura too. And that truth carried a pain far heavier than I was prepared for. Asterisk. The day of the wedding came like any other, quiet, with sunlight slipping through the curtains, and the sound of birds in the garden, but my heart, it wasn't quiet. It was screaming, silently, inside my chest. I had marked the date in my mind, even if it was never written on an invitation addressed to me. I knew what day it was. I knew she'd be waking up with butterflies in her stomach, slipping into a white dress, laughing with her bridesmaids, and I also knew I wouldn't be there to see it. I thought I'd stay away from the internet that day. I told myself I wouldn't look, wouldn't check. I even put my phone in a drawer and tried to distract myself, sweeping, baking, watering, the flowers that no longer made me smile. But grief has a way of finding you no matter how deep you bury it. By early afternoon, my curiosity got the better of me. Or maybe it wasn't curiosity, maybe it was a desperate longing to feel close to her, even from afar. I sat down with my laptop and typed in her name, and there it was. The wedding. A cascade of images began to flood my screen. Emily standing under a floral arch, her hands entwined with Daniel's, Laura adjusting the veil, smiling. Guests in pastel dresses holding champagne flutes. A dance floor lit by fairy lights, laughter frozen in pixels. And my granddaughter, radiant, thought she was beautiful. There was no denying it. Her dress hugged her just right, her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her smile that smile looked exactly like the one she had when she used to twirl in my living room. And I cried, not from envy, not from jealousy, but from grief, because I had imagined that moment for years. I had dreamed of brushing a strand of hair from her face as I told her how proud I was. I had pictured myself sitting in the front row, holding a tissue, watching the little girl I raised walk into her new life while still feeling connected to her past. But I wasn't part of it, not even in spirit, not in name, not in photograph. I scrolled through dozens of posts from guest Sitch. One, a reminder that others had seen her dress before I did, heard her vows before I could, hugged her in celebration while I sat alone, watching from a cold screen. Someone posted a video of her first dance. The caption read, "Such a special moment. No dry eyes in the room." Well, there was one dry room. Mine. I watched her sway with Daniel, her head on his shoulder, their bodies moving slowly to a love song I didn't recognize. I imagined her father nearby, maybe giving a toast. I imagined Laura dabbing her eyes, beaming with pride. And then I saw it. The table marked family. A photo showed them all sitting together, plates full, glasses raised, all the faces I had once called mine, all gathered in one frame without me. I felt like I had been erased from a story I helped write. I clicked off the browser and just sat there. Still, silent, numb. The ache in my chest didn't come from not being invited. It came from being forgotten. It was one thing to feel distant. It was another to be deliberately excluded. But watching it all unfold, knowing I had become just a viewer of a life I used to be central to, that was a kind of heartbreak I never expected to face in old age. In the hours that followed, people texted me, many, just a few friends who had seen the photos. "Wasn't the wedding beautiful? You must be so proud." I didn't have the energy to correct them. I didn't want to explain that I wasn't there, that I hadn't even been told, that I had watched my granddaughter's most important day like a stranger peeking through a window. So I simply replied, yes, she looked lovely. And she did, because my love for her hasn't changed even if her love for me has. That's the cruel irony of being a grandparent. We give everything, expect little, and when we're left behind, we grieve quietly so we don't make the people we love uncomfortable. Later that evening, I opened my drawer and pulled out the memory box I had made for her over the years. Inside were photos, letters, drawings, pieces of a love story she no longer seemed to remember. I ran my fingers over a crayon drawing that read, "I love you, Nana, forever and ever." And I whispered, "I still love you too, even now, even after everything." Because love like this doesn't turn off, it doesn't disappear, it just waits in silence, in sorrow, in the hope that one day, maybe she'll remember. Asterisk. They say time heals all wounds, but I've learned something different. Time doesn't heal what silence keeps open. The wedding came and went, no call, no message, no thank you, no I missed you, just silence. It wrapped itself around my days like a fog, dulling everything. I still went through the motions, tea in the morning, watering the flowers, folding my sweaters just so, but something inside me had unraveled, and no one noticed. Not even Laura, not even Emily. I kept checking my phone out of habit, expecting anything to come through. A late apology, a short message, even a simple, "I hope you're okay." But there was nothing. No acknowledgement that a wound had been left gaping. No recognition that a place had been left empty. My place. At first, I told myself, maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe after the honeymoon, she'd reach out. But days turned into weeks, and the silence stretched. The hardest part wasn't watching the wedding. It was living through the days after it and realizing no one even noticed I wasn't there. They celebrated, they danced, they posted photos, and I disappeared. I tried to keep myself busy. I took walks, even when my knees protested. I started reading again, though the words didn't hold me the way they used to. I cooked meals for one and ate them with the sound of old radio shows in the background just to feel like someone was talking, but inside, I was grieving. And here's the thing about this kind of grief, it's invisible. No one brings you flowers. No one says, "I'm sorry you lost your granddaughter," because she's still alive. She's smiling in pictures. She's just no longer yours, so you suffer quietly, because who would understand? When I did finally see Laura again, it was weeks later at the grocery store. Of all places, she hugged me like nothing had happened, as if I hadn't spent her daughter's wedding day sitting alone at my kitchen table, holding a photo album. Instead of a hand, she asked me if I'd seen the photos. I nodded, yes, she looked beautiful, and that was it. No apology, no regret, just small talk. bananas, on sale. How warm the weather had been. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her, how could you let this happen? How could you let her forget me like that? But I didn't, because I was raised to be polite, to keep peace, to swallow hurt like medicine bitter, but necessary. So I smiled and told her to take care. That night, I sat by my window and stared at the stars. I wondered if Emily had ever looked up at the same sky and thought of me. Wondered if, just for a second, she had missed me. If she had turned during the reception and thought Nana would have loved this song. But if she had, she never said so. That's what hurts the most, not being excluded. Not even the betrayal, but the silence that followed, like I never existed. Like all those years we spent laughing, loving, living, had been packed away, like holiday decorations and forgotten in a dusty attic. Sometimes I imagine her reading these words. Maybe one day she'll find them, these stories I've written down, these memories I've clung to, and maybe, just maybe, she'll feel a flicker of something. Remorse, love, recognition. But I don't know if that day will ever come, and so I write them anyway. Because when no one listens, we still need to speak, even if it's to ourselves, even if it's to the stars. I still set a place for her in my heart. Still imagine what I would have said if I'd stood by her side on her wedding day. Still whisper blessings into the wind when I think of her, because that's what love does. Even when it's forgotten, even when it's uninvited, even when it's left in silence, it waits, it watches, and it remembers. Asterisk, you don't just get over something like that. People think time dulls the pain, and maybe for some it does, but not when the wound is tied to love, and especially not when that love was pure, unconditional, and lifelong. After the wedding, I tried to carry on. I really did. I took up knitting again, started volunteering at the library, even joined a small book club on Thursdays with other women my age. I laughed at their stories. I brought cookies. I played the role of the wise, cheerful grandmother who had seen it all and survived. But deep down, something in me stayed broken. There's a peculiar kind of ache that comes with being cut off from your family, not because you walked away, but because they slowly closed the door behind you and didn't notice you were still standing on the porch. Every now and then, someone from church would ask about Emily. Oh, she's married now, I'd say with a soft smile. Oh, that must have been such a proud moment for you. I never corrected them. I never said I wasn't invited, because saying that out loud felt like ripping the wound open again. Besides, what would they say? What comfort could anyone offer me that I hadn't already tried to give myself? So I learned to keep it inside, to smile when it hurt, to carry on, quietly. And yet, no matter how many sunrises passed, no matter how many kind words or distractions I surrounded myself with, the ache remained, not just because I missed the wedding, but because I missed her. I missed hearing her laugh echo down my hallway. I missed the way she used to call me when she didn't know how to make something in the kitchen. I missed the feeling of being needed, of being loved out loud. Now, all I had were memories and silence. One afternoon, I saw a photo of her on social media holding a baby shower invitation. A friend had tagged her, saying, "So happy for this next chapter," and my heart stopped. A baby, was she expecting? I sat there, staring at that image, trembling with a strange cocktail of joy and sorrow. I should have been the first to know, should have been knitting little socks already, should have been on the list to help decorate or pick out names. Instead, I was just another spectator, piecing together my family's life through secondhand glimpses and digital breadcrumbs. And still, I loved her, even after everything, because that's what a grandmother's heart does. It aches, it breaks, it bleeds quietly, and still, it beats with love. Some nights, I would write her letters I never sent. I'd sit at my kitchen table with a pen and lined paper, pouring out the thoughts I could never say out loud. Dear Emily, I saw your wedding pictures. You looked like a dream. I wish I had been there to tell you in person. I miss you. I miss us. And then I'd fold them in place, them in the drawer where I kept all her childhood drawings, just to keep them close, just in case one day she came back. But I never mailed them, because I didn't want to intrude, didn't want to force my way into a life where I clearly didn't belong anymore. And yet, every time the phone rang, I hoped it would be her. Every knock at the door gave me pause. Even after months, I was still waiting, not because I couldn't move on, but because part of me refused to give up on someone I loved so deeply. That's what they don't tell you about growing older. It's not the wrinkles or the loneliness that hurt the most. It's the slow fading from the lives you helped build. It's watching from the sidelines, smiling while your heart quietly breaks. And though I tried to move on through hobbies, prayer, routine, there was always that ache, that question in my soul. How did we get here? Was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I say something I shouldn't have? Or did life simply drift us apart while no one was looking? I may never know the answer. And maybe that's part of the sorrow. Some goodbyes aren't spoken. They just happen. They live in the spaces where laughter used to be. But still, I hold on. Not to bitterness, not to anger, but to love. Because, despite the pain, despite the silence, despite the fact that I wasn't invited to the wedding, I still believe love doesn't end just because someone walks away. It waits. Asterisk, asterisk. If you're still listening to me now, dear one, then maybe you know what it feels like. To sit in a quiet house that once rang with laughter, to keep your phone nearby, hoping it will light up with their name, to love so deeply, and still be left behind. This isn't just my story, it's our story, a story shared by grandmothers around the world who gave their hearts, their hands, and their time to raise children, only to become an afterthought. The women who stayed up late sewing Halloween costumes, who wiped away tears from scraped knees, who whispered prayers over cribs and school buses and graduation gowns, and then were forgotten when the invitations were sent. To you, I say this: you are not alone. I know the ache, I know the silence, I know the long nights spent wondering, did I matter? Let me tell you now, you did. You still do, even if they never say it, even if the photos don't include you, even if the table was set and your chair was left empty. You mattered. You matter. The love you gave still lives in them, whether they choose to see it or not. It's in the way they laugh, the way they comfort others, the way they tell stories. Pieces of you echo through their lives, no matter how far they stray. And while this wound may never fully heal, it does not define your worth. Their choices are not a reflection of your failure. They are a reflection of distance, of change, of a world that often forgets how sacred the bond between generations truly is. But we remember, we grandmothers, we carry memory like fine lace, delicate but strong. We don't forget the details. We don't discard the past. We hold it, we honor it, we keep it alive, and maybe, one day, they'll look back and realize what they lost when they left us out. Maybe one day, they'll knock on our doors, or call, or write. Maybe one day they'll sit at our feet again, and remember what it felt like to be wrapped in a kind of love that never asked for anything in return. Until then, hold your head high. You are not invisible. You are not unwanted. You are not unloved. You are a grandmother, and that is something eternal. If this story touched your heart, please don't let it stop here. Leave a comment below. Share your story, your memories, your heartbreaks. You are not alone. Subscribe to this channel for more real, emotional stories from voices that need to be heard. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their pain is seen, and their love still matters. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories come from those who were silenced the longest. And we, grandmothers, have so much to say. Asterisk, asterisk.